Welcome again. Let us continue our discussion on some of the fundamentals that are required to understand vehicle dynamics. So, quite often we use the terminology sprung and unsprung mass. I think I've already used this term, right? So, once again, let me explain that. That's the issue. So, the vehicle, the part in which the occupant sits, you can call that part as the sprung mass. That includes your frame, the body, the powertrain, all this that is called as sprung mass. As I said, it includes frame, correct? The powertrain which sits on the frame, then the body, and all other associated parts, right? So that constitutes sprung mass. Here the axle, the brakes, the wheel, those parts, right? The wheels, all these, they become unsprung mass. So you can say axle, then the wheel, right? Then the brakes. Okay, all these constitute the unsprung mass. On the wheel, the tire sits. Tire is modeled as a spring, right? That is tire. So sprung mass sits on the suspension. So the control arms, the spring, the damper, that is the suspension part of it. Okay, half of that mass you transfer it here, half you transfer it here. That is what we call the sprung mass, the unsprung mass. Right. Next. So let us look at frequency of vibration. The sprung mass of part of it itself, if I start modeling. So during its bounce motion, that is vertical motions, the differential equation we can write it as m d square z by dt square and c dz by dt, that is damping force, plus kz spring force, that is equal to a excitation force. That excitation force comes from a road. If I divide throughout by m, then this becomes d square z by dt square c by m, and this is k by m. And here I can write ft by m. This k by m is defined as omega n square, or omega n is equal to root of k by m. We call it as the natural frequency of the sprung mass. We can also write this as fn. Omega n is f is omega by 2 pi. So it is 1 by 2 pi root of k by m, we can write. Okay, suppose it is struck by a road force, then sprung mass will start oscillating. Right, it oscillates with a frequency of omega n is equal to root of k by m radians per second, or 1 by 2 2 pi root of k by m hertz. Is it okay? Now, suppose input is something like z is equal to z naught sin omega t, and this is what you call it as input frequency, and this is oscillating with its natural frequency omega n. So here, if I write f of t as something like z naught sin omega t by m, here this is excitation frequency, this becomes natural frequency, this one. If the excitation frequency is equal to natural frequency, the system resonates. So you know mass stores kinetic energy always half m square, correct, half m square, and spring stores kinetic energy half, say, kx square. Suppose it is z moments, so I should write here z square. Here we place, let me write it as z dot. Z dot means dz by dt, that is v. So it is kinetic energy gets converted into potential energy and vice versa. So mass to spring, spring to mass. That's why it continues to oscillate like this. So this is how I can show first harmonic or second harmonic, third harmonic, like this. Right. Now it continues to oscillate. But in a system, like in a car, by chance your suspension has only spring and your sprung mass, you are sitting over there, it hits a bump, then it continues to oscillate. Then nobody would like to travel in a car. This energy has to be dissipated. Okay, dissipated. Now let us look at this. So that force only I'm just showing. This is the road. This you can call it as a bump. Again a trough, like this. You can. Your wheel is there. You have a spring and you have a damper. So moment it moves over a bump like this gets compressed. This is what you can call it as a Jones stroke. Correct? Again, as it rolls down, it opens up, it expands, rebound. So you can call it as Bones stroke. It is expansion, here it is compression. So you can call this as a complete cycle, right? From here, if you start to here, you can call it as one cycle. Is that okay? You can just call it as one cycle, right? Your wheel starts rolling like this. By the time it completes this way, you can call it as one cycle. And vehicle is moving with a velocity, say v, vehicle velocity. We say this vehicle is subjected to an input like this. Okay. So now let us consider it is a 15-inch diameter rim. Tire aspect ratio is 70, so tire width is 235 mm. Aspect ratio is known, tire thickness can be determined. That is, tire diameter of the wheel is 15 inch. I have multiplied by 2.54 centimeters or 25.4 millimeter. Then 2 times thickness I have added. I'll get diameter is around 710 millimeter. So distance traveled by one revolution of the wheel, when the wheel rolls from one point to, right, as it rolls like this, the distance it is going to cover is going to be 2.235 meters, say 2.23 meters. Once the wheel rolls like this. So if the wheel makes one revolution per second, that the vehicle speed is 1 revolution means it covers 2.23 meters. In 3600 it covers so many meters. If I divide by 1000 I'll get kilometers. So kilometers per hour. So in every second if the wheel experience a Jones and a bone stroke, vehicle experience 1 Hertz excitation. Correct? So if the vehicle speed increases, frequency of excitation also increases. Right? So just I am considering 1 rotation of wheel per second is equal to 1 Hertz frequency. The vehicle is subjected to 1 Hertz frequency. Is that okay? It is vehicle having something like 15-inch diameter rim and 70 aspect ratio with a tire width of 235 will cover around 2.23 meters. Correct? So what I'm trying to convince is that in 2.23 meters, so your vehicle will go 1 Jones stroke and 1 bone stroke. If this happens in 1 second, and your vehicle will be running with a speed of something like 8.023 kilometers per hour. The speed increases, definitely the time decreases, 1 by t, the frequency increases. Right? So let us keep this idea for further discussion. Right? Next is, as you've seen here, what's happening? Kinetic energy is converting into potential energy, potential back into kinetic energy. So that's why it will set to oscillate. I need to remove this energy. For that, I need a damper. So what is that I do? You know, shear force is directly proportional to velocity gradient. Correct? No, velocity gradient, or shear stress is equal to mu into dv by dy. If dv by dy is linear, I can say mu v by y. This is what you call it as Newton's law of viscosity. Mu is known as coefficient of absolute viscosity. Fine, sir. We have got this. So tau is equal to mu v by, sorry, here I have written, sorry man, z, remove that y, you replace with z, vertical direction, vz. If I multiply shear stress with shear area, then it becomes, say, force shear stress into area. Here also mu a v by z. So mu a by z v. So this mu a by z, let me call it as c. That is damping coefficient into velocity. So damping force is damping coefficient to velocity. So see, damping coefficient, its unit will become now Newton second per meter. Is that okay? So because of this viscosity of the oil, energy dissipation happens. Energy dissipation. See, look here. This is the damper. Here we have filled this with oil. Correct? It is a closed vessel, let us say. And it will have small holes. So when this moves up, this fellow will move up with a velocity, say z dot. This oil squeezes through these holes. That's how the shear action happens. That means this kinetic energy has been converted to, because of the shear action, thermal energy gets dissipated. When it opens up, whatever oil is there from here, it gets squeezed and will go on the other side. So that's how the energy gets dissipated. That's what exactly the damping does. So this is what we call it as damping coefficient, which depends on viscosity of the oil. Choose an oil of the right viscosity. Now shear area. Shear area means I said, so in the piston you have a number of holes like this, holes. So holes is like d is the diameter of the hole, then pi d l, height l is the height of the hole. So when it passes through this is the area of the hole, shear area of the hole. Then z, see in fluid mechanics, if this is the flat plate and this is the fluid flowing, and if you ask you to draw the velocity profile, what you do is simply draw a vertical line there, and this is no slip condition you consider. This has zero velocity. Next we'll have some velocity. Next we'll have velocity. Next we'll have velocity. So velocity keeps increasing. Correct. Then we join all these points. This is what we call it as velocity gradient. So suppose you take any two layers. The distance between any two layers, if you consider it as z, so dz, and the difference in velocity if you consider dv, then dv by dz becomes velocity gradient. So dv by dz. So same way in the hole, if you take cross section of the hole, and if you consider this is the axis of the hole, correct, fluid is flowing here. Across this, if you draw the velocity gradient, you get the velocity gradient like this. 0 here, like this. At the center line, you'll get the maximum velocity. So this distance, I call it as, say, z. That is nothing but the radius of the hole itself. So by making radius of the hole small, increasing the number of holes or increasing the length of the hole and all those things, it is always possible for us to adjust the value of C. Okay. So you can go on varying the value of C. At one particular point, it will reach to critical damping. Critical damping means it will not allow it, it will just stop oscillating this mass, that critical value. That we can evaluate it as 2 root mk. Great. So then we call it as damping ratio. The actual damping that we have provided here to the critical value, we call it as damping ratio. We represent it by zeta. If zeta is less than 1 means what? C is less than Cc. That is under damped system. Correct? No. C is less than Cc. If C is equal to 0, then no damping, undamped. C is less than Cc, it is underdamped. C equal to Cc, then it is critically damped. C is greater than Cc, then it is overdamped. Correct? Right. So what exactly it means is that, so it was when there was no damping, it was continuously oscillating like this with a constant amplitude. Now if I introduce damping, what happens is, if it is oscillating, let's say it's oscillating with certain amplitude, it will start with a large amplitude, gradually it will die down like this. This is what we mean by damping. Then we can design this. Maybe within 1 or 2 oscillations, you should completely damp down. So there was energy, that's why it was oscillating. Now the energy is removed, it will stop oscillating. So damper that way dissipates the energy, means energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It converts that kinetic energy into thermal energy and throws away. So that's how it will die down. Okay, that is what damping is. So a automobile damping, it looks like that. It will have spring, and here inside you will have dashpot, a cylinder, fluid arrangement and all that. That probably in the coming slides I will explain in detail. nothing to worry about that. So, but idea is this dissipates the energy. So this is what exactly, I bring the damper, I dissipate the energy. Then you see here, it damps down. So what is the frequency? That frequency, we call it as now damped natural frequency. So that is given by omega into 1 under omega n under root 1 minus zeta square. So all these, we must have proved this in vibration topic. I'm just writing down, otherwise I think I do not want to put my effort here in proving these things. That is damped natural frequency. It's given as omega n under root 1 minus zeta square. This is also we're done in the vibration topic. I'm just taking from that and continuing with the discussion. So please know that car means your sprung mass, suspension is spring. Its job is to convert the kinetic energy into potential energy, and so this continuous conversion will be happening. That time the damper job is to dissipate the energy so that it can damp down the oscillations, so that even if your vehicle hits a bump, it start oscillating, but within 1 or 2 seconds it will completely die down. Yeah, this is what exactly I have shown here. You see here, if you take that equation which I showed there earlier, with respect to input excitation, if I start drawing input frequency, this is undamped one. It's a constant amplitude, keeps oscillating. As you increase the damping ratio, you can see amplitude of oscillation gradually decreases. Right. When zeta is equal to 1, you see critically damped, it is not oscillating at all. Zeta greater than 2, greater is zeta equal to 2, you see here it not at all oscillating. But we must be careful. It is not at all oscillating. Why we should not make zeta equal to 1, zeta equal to 2? Why we should be having an underdamped system? The idea is reaching to this settling value. How fast one can reach the settling value, it's a very important thing. So a particular zeta value, though it oscillates, it will settle down very fast. So that zeta is the right value. Correct. And if it is not oscillating also, the energy, it takes a lot of time for the energy to get dissipated and to settle down. That's the main thing. So we don't go for critically damped or over damped kind of a system, right? Okay, this is what I said. Okay, time period, damped time period and all that thing to complete one cycle. Then something like we talk about in vehicles, vibration isolation part and vibration damping part. I was talking about a damper. It damps down means it dissipates the energy. Vibration isolation is something different. You see here, I've just written down, anyway, I'll explain in the next slide. A good vibration damper takes mechanical energy out of the system, correct? I explained that. It dissipates the energy. Oil dampers or dash parts have good damping capability but no isolation capability. I'll tell you what is that isolation. A good vibration isolator lowers the natural frequency of a system to below the excitation frequency. So keeping these two frequencies out of sync greatly reduces the problem of vibration. See, as I said, natural frequency. Suppose I have some, a spring and mass, a spring damper system. Okay, this is K, this is mass, this is C damper. Sometimes we use F damping coefficient. Its natural frequency is what? 1 by 2 pi root of K by M. Okay, some radians per second, some hertz you get. Okay. Now by chance, If I add one more spring here, this is say K1, this is K2. So its natural frequency is 1 by 2 pi. Root of K1 plus K2 by M. Okay. Its frequency now, this is, you write F1 N1, F N2. This frequency is very different from this frequency. Right. Suppose my road excitation frequency is something nearer to this. Excitation frequency is nearer to this frequency. So there is chances my vehicle undergoing, resonance effect. So now the frequency what has happened is increased. Correct now? Because this value has increased, so I have increased this frequency. This is not very nearer to the excitation frequency at all. So this system chances of undergoing, resonance is less. So I have not used any damper or anything like that. Only by varying this, either this or either this, I can change the natural frequency. Then I can isolate. So a good vibration isolator lowers the natural frequency of a system to below the excitation frequency. Correct? Here I have increased actually. Another way I can do is reduce this stiffness or increase the mass. I can lower that. It's not a problem at all. Keeping these two frequencies out of sync greatly reduces the problem of vibration. That's what it means. Properly designed metal springs and rubber mounts can be good isolators but have almost no damping capability. Properly add metal springs, or you can ask rubber mounts, which will act as another kind of springs only. So foam products can be good isolators but have limited life. They can change the frequency. Right? Suppose by solving that equation, m d square y by dt square m d square z by d square z by dt square plus c dz by dt plus kz, correct, is equal to say f naught sin omega t, like this. If you have an equation, and I can solve that equation, and I can plot amplitude, actual output by input amplitude. This plot versus frequency ratio, the system frequency, excitation frequency ratio. If I plot, you see when the frequency ratio is equal to 1, that means excitation frequency, and if I divide by k by m, you'll get system frequency. System frequency, that is natural frequency. Natural frequency and excitation frequency equal to 1. You can see here, if zeta is equal to 0, it oscillates with infinite amplitude. But if I go on adding zeta, the amplitude decreases. Amplitude decreases. That's the main thing there. So that is damping. Damping. You see here, the frequency ratios are different. F by Fn is 1, see here 1, it's 1.5, 2, 2.5, something like that. If you see in this region, what is your zeta value is immaterial. In all cases, you see the amplification ratio remains the same. Amplification ratio remains the same. So it is not necessarily I have to bother about the zeta at all. So this is what you can call it as isolation region. Here, start becoming closer isolation region. So same way I can write phase angle versus frequency ratio also. So you can see sprung mass natural frequency 1 Hz, say the excitation frequency is more than 1 Hz, then isolation happens. At 1 Hz sprung mass, so in cars also, that's what exactly I said. Now let us go back to our slide there. I said If I can fix my car frequency is equal to say 1 Hertz. The car which I was talking about, right? Previous case, that's here, right? This particular example. Now that car's natural frequency, if I fix it as 1 Hertz, my excitation frequency is also 1 Hertz, road excitation frequency. That means if I can make the vehicle run at a speed of something like 8 kilometers per hour, say, that means the car is subjected to an excitation frequency of 1 Hertz. Suppose if I design my car natural frequency as also 1 Hertz, then if whenever I run a car at 8 kilometers per hour, then there will be some kind of a resonance. But if I go on increasing the car speed, my excitation frequency will be very different from natural frequency. So then chances of occurring resonance is completely eliminated. So that is why if I fix the car frequency as 1 Hertz, normally we don't run our car at 8 kilometers per hour. So we just pass through this point. That means chances of car undergoing resonance is completely eliminated. And the people sitting, occupants will always feel comfortable. You see here, why 1 Hertz only? The reason is that most of the human beings tolerant natural frequency is around 2 to 8. See, this is the frequency many of our parts will have in the brain. Natural frequency between 2 to 8 Hertz. If we excite between 2 to 8 Hertz, then there will be a problem. So that is why we keep this outside that range. Say it is at 1 Hertz. We keep this. By chance, car natural frequency, if I can make it something like 3, definitely the occupants will have lots of difficulty. Right. So please remember in future, what is the natural frequency of the overall car? It's 1 Hertz. Most of the vehicles we fix between say 0.95 to 1.03, 1.1, something like that, within that range only, right? Right. Sometimes we use the terminology understeer and oversteer. I'll deal in detail about that, but the problem is before going to that chapter, quite often we come across this. So what it means? Say it is cornering, means taking a turn. And your vehicle is supposed to follow the path which is in the green color. When I steer it, taking a turn, it should follow this path. But I steer it, I give the required steering output. Okay. So when I give the required steering input, the vehicle instead of following this, it follows this path. So to make this vehicle follow this path, I have to steer more than what is required. Okay. Such a case we call it as understeer. I already told you, I think in the previous video, suppose if I consider the vehicle into two boxes like this. This is the front center of gravity, is the rear center of gravity. Overall center of gravity I am not saying, for the front portion and the rear portion. If the load in the front is more, then what is going to happen is it's WF by G V squared by R. Correct now? Right. This is W R by G V squared by R. If WF is greater than WR, now let us say this is overall center of gravity. This force about this center of gravity will create this moment, couple. This force will create a couple in the opposite direction. So if this couple is greater than this couple, though I try to steer like this, it is trying to go this way. That is what understeer is. Suppose it is other way. This load is less, this load is more, then even if I steer, if I give the correct steering input, instead of steering only this much, it will steer more than what is required. Such a case we call it as oversteer. This is understeer. And what is intended, we call it as neutral steer. So later I call that what is steering angle delta. So that time I will tell you what exactly this value should be, right? Anyway, it depends on the wheelbase length and turning radius and all those kind of a thing. So I can say delta is equal to wheelbase length is L, turning radius is R. Correct? It is in radians. So pi radians is 180 degree. So 180 by pi is what? So 3.14. Then it is something like 57.3 L by R, you can say. That means if I know the vehicle wheelbase length, this one, and also if I know the turning radius R, then I can find out, this is what we call it as theoretical, that is neutral steer. So understeer means more than this angle I should steer. Oversteer means less than that angle I will steer. That is the meaning. Okay, right, sir. Now what are our current challenges? The vehicle that I run should have lowest possible emissions, meet Euro 6 standard. So basically we work on improving the engine technology and try to make the powertrain as efficient as possible. So it should not, the emissions include, carbon monoxide, NOx, correct? Then hydrocarbons, unburnt hydrocarbons. If it is diesel engine, including particulate matter. So we need to follow this, meet this requirement. Not only that, any hydrocarbon when I burn, it is going to emit carbon dioxide also, which you call it as greenhouse gas. So that also should be minimized. Means I should make fuel efficient. Then nobody buys a vehicle to kill himself, right? So occupant safety is very important. So safety, these are all already, this is must. In addition to that, your vehicle should provide stability. That will increase the safety levels. Occupant comfort, that's very important. And I should enjoy driving, good driving experience. Correct? You should provide different performance. Means responding to my inputs is very important. Okay. So these are all very important. So vehicle dynamics is the subject which deals with these ideas. Correct? Okay, let us look at those things. I've just shown here, when we give input as 100, finally what is going to be coming out for us. So what all the losses happen? How to reduce the losses? Over the years, better and better technologies are being introduced to reduce these losses. Anyway, there are issues like this. Now, okay, most of these gasoline based petroleum based engines, okay, beating Euro 6 standards, fine. Carbon dioxide, okay, that means fuel, they have made more fuel efficient. However, ultimate idea is to have no pollution, no emission at all. So the thinking is, can we replace this powertrain with electric powertrain? Correct, electric powertrain. So for this electric powertrain, electric energy, batteries are required, and the batteries have to be charged. How do we charge? So shall we use the same electrical energy that is produced out of fossil fuels? Fossil fuels, right? Or then it is not going to solve the problem. Only thing is, instead of polluting everywhere, we are polluting at specific points. So can we use non-traditional energy sources? Non-traditional energy sources. Can we use this non-traditional like solar, wind, such sources, and see that the electricity is made available for this battery charging and then drive electric? Probably all this. You do all this, fine, but basically this is required whether you have petrol engine vehicle or you have electric vehicle. So stability, comfort, and driving experience are important. Anyway, this is also made, driving is also made autonomous. Still, stability of the vehicle and comfort of the vehicle, which will increase the safety, is very, very important, right? So that's how vehicle dynamics plays a very important role. Don't be under the impression just because tomorrow, if you do not have petroleum based engine, right, fossil fuel based engine, then the vehicle dynamics is of no use or irrelevant. No, right? So ground vehicle control system, let us see. What exactly as a driver I am interested in? I want to achieve the desired speed, and I should be able to maneuver the vehicle in the direction I want, right? Right. I want my vehicle to follow my instructions to when I've given direction. That's important. This is input. So here outputs are vehicle performance, means it is a speed related issue, maneuvering issue, correct, maneuvering the vehicle, comfort, vehicle speed, vehicle direction, correct. Direction I can see visually. Road condition also I can reason, my vehicle condition. Many of these things I can see, correct. Seeing this, I can operate my throttle, brake, steering. That is, I can vary the speed, correct, increase the speed or decrease the speed. I can stop the vehicle or slow down the vehicle. I can change the direction, steering, right, to avoid obstacle and other things. This is fine. Okay. Now there are certain things, hidden things. Desired performance, that is handling right. What do you mean by this? Suppose to, if I accelerate the vehicle, what is the time taken by the vehicle to move from one acceleration point to another acceleration point, or one speed point to another speed point? Maneuvering, how it responds, right? What is the comfort I get? This is what is required in a car. The car will be subjected to various disturbances. What are those disturbances? Road condition and aerodynamics related. These are the disturbances. These are what I design. Now I should be able to measure these values and correct this. But this is what then I should be getting what I want. Dynamically correcting this is difficult. Correct? So at the time of design, I should see and I should tune my vehicle design parameters to achieve this. Right? No. So that is what finally in a vehicle I should look for: good performance, handling and ride. If so, now let us define what is performance, what is handling, what is ride. I think in the initial video I told you performance is to do with something, how to the time taken by a vehicle to accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour. I told you about handling. It is to do with the safety and it is to do with the maneuvering. Ride is to do with comfort. Anyway, we will define and explain these things in detail. That will set the foundation for studying vehicle dynamics. Okay, now at this point, let us stop. In the next video, I will explain the meaning of performance, ride, and handling. Now, thank you.